Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and this is a very special podcast for me because I'm bringing on Jacob Gibbs. And for those who don't know, some of you may know, he's the co-host of another podcast I'm on, Beyond the Box Score for CBS Sports. So it's a pretty cool moment for me, bringing together my two co-hosts on one podcast, having them meet each other and talk ball. These are two of my favorite ball knowers out there. And Jacob Gibbs, for those who don't know and don't follow our podcast, Beyond the Box Score, which you, by the way, if you're a fantasy football fan, you better start following. So we drop a lot of nuggets on there. Gibbs is one of the best ball knowers out there. He's built an insane following on Twitter, and he'll tell you where to follow that work. He has a newsletter for free that we drop in CBS Sports, and he just dropped today his running back tiers for Dynasty football with great breakdowns of the running back position. And this year, and more recently, he's really dove deep into film analysis. I mean, I don't think I've seen anyone grind the running back class tape-wise, kind of like you have, Jacob, at least when it comes to what you've put out there on Twitter and in other places. I mean, you're showing your work. We see the cut-ups. We see the advanced stats that go along with it. We've got a lot to talk about today on the show. We're going to talk about running backs. The way that Jacob's grouped these together is a very interesting way to categorize them. I think will be very important. We know this is a position that's important for the Giants because the majority of their pre-draft top 30 visits were spent at the running back position. So a lot of guys to get through. And then we may have a little time for some wide receivers and tight ends. We'll see where we're at on that. But without further ado, Jacob, how are you doing? And tell people where they can find your work.
I'm fantastic, Dan. Thank you for having me here. Calling my following an insane following, I think, is perfect because I have people on Twitter who reach out to me when I list like 20, 25 running backs, my top 25. I've watched all their film. I love all these guys. And they're like, you need to watch this guy. You need to watch Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. You need to watch Corey Kleiner. And then I do watch them and I'm like, holy crap, this is like, can I cuss on here? I'm like, This is like my favorite new running back. Thank you so much for introducing me to Corey Kleiner. Truly insane. Truly the sickest of the sick are the people who find me on Twitter. And Dan is at the top of that list, just eats it up.
Yeah, I love this content. I've been consuming a lot of it, Jacob. And today, as I mentioned, you can find this on cbssports.com. Sign up for our Fantasy Football Today newsletter. Jacob dropped what was really informative, a deep post on his running back tiers and running back rankings for Dynasty. But I actually like how you grouped it before getting into your Dynasty ranks because you did it in a way that I think applies to the Giants. And as I mentioned this before, and it was a really interesting way to categorize these backs by grouping them into different kinds. So why don't you go over the first way you categorize these backs and who fits into each category to start? And then we'll get into some individual evaluations.
Yeah, so these aren't necessarily a set of rankings, but just a way to think about the skill sets and how they might apply at the NFL level, what kind of roles they might play. And so this is based off of data as well as watching the guys play and the kind of roles that they filled at the collegiate level. So at the top, the S tier is Ashton Genty. There's nothing like him. And then I've got guys that are three down skill sets, and that's Amarian Hampton and Trayvon Henderson. I think those two are pretty clear to people. The one that also I think stands out as possibly being able to fill this role, and this is taking draft capital into account because I've got a couple other guys who could fill this, but I don't know if they'll be drafted to fill this necessarily, is Devin Neal. From Kansas. I could see like Sean Payton or someone like that falling in love with him and basically playing him every snap. I think you could throw Keyshawn Judkins into that as well. I've got him in a different tier though, which is maybe we can run an offense through this running back. And that's Judkins. That's Damian Martinez out of Miami. Really, really love him. He could be a great fit for the Giants, I think. And then Ollie Gordon. And Ollie Gordon is somebody who had a huge 2023, fell off a little bit as Oklahoma State really struggled this past season. But he's a guy he's proven to be able to play all three downs. There were only 4 running backs in this class who had multiple seasons where they had 60 or more snaps being trusted to pass protect. And they also had a pressure rate allowed that was below the position average, which is 7.5%. Gordon was one of them. I know the Giants just had him in for a visit. Trayvon Henderson was one of them. Amarian Hampton was one of them. The other was Taj Brooks, who is one of my favorite late round guys. Do you want me to run through all these categories or just?
I like the categories. I want to hear that. Yeah.
Okay. So those are, maybe we can run an offense with this running back. And really, I think Gordon, to me, he's probably, I made these rankings a few weeks ago. To me, he's probably more towards like a 3-down skill set or probably a backup, but could play 3 downs if needed. The more that I watched him, I was a little underwhelmed with his rushing ability. I think it maybe is a little bit oversold.
Did you watch 2023 tape at all, or
yeah.
just 2024? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I watched every touch from both seasons. I just don't. He reminds me of Najee Harris, and specifically kind of like how Najee tried to reinvent his game this past season. And what I mean when I say that is he's trying to make guys miss a lot, and I don't necessarily know if he has the skill set to do that, especially at a high level as a pro. He's really, really light on his feet. This is Ollie Gordon. This is kind of Najee this past year too. I don't know if you watched the Steelers. Najee ran with far less power and more dancing around, and it didn't work very well. And I kind of saw that with the Gordon tape too, where his contact balance isn't quite where I would like it to be for somebody who's trying to do this, and he's not using his leg drive and his power to get through and move the pile as much as I would like to see for a back with his size. But he can pass protect. He can play on passing downs. He can contribute as a receiver. So he's an interesting, complete skill set, but it's kind of like a master of none, jack of all trades kind of guy. And typically you need to have some kind of dominant skill that you can bank on if you're going to get time as a pro player, I think.
So draft him in the first round is what you're saying, Jacob?
I don't. No, I would not. I have a hard time fitting him into my top 20 to just show how insane this draft class is, because this was like legitimately statistically the best running back in 2023, Ollie Gordon.
I wanted to ask you, because Dan made me aware that you were really high on Tyrone Tracy Jr. last year, and that worked out for the New York Giants. So what exactly did you see in his game? And are there any running backs that are similar, not just like that SMU kid, just because he was a former receiver, just from a running style standpoint? Is there anybody that you think is akin to what Tyrone Tracy Jr. showed you in 2023?
Yeah, I would say DJ Giddens out of K-State is sort of similar to him in that he's got the acceleration, the burst, and the deceleration as well to do start-stop stuff. And he also is surprisingly strong as a runner and surprisingly good contact balance for a guy who is a bit taller and like gets labeled as like an upright runner, which some people said about Tracy. I think Giddens is kind of the same way, where he is 6 feet tall, and so he looks a little bit upright, but he runs with contact balance that's as good as a lot of the smaller backs in this class. I really, really think just his coordination, his legs are really, really strong and allow him to move through contact. And then the other thing that Tracy does really well too is just the ability to, when he gets into the open field, to make people miss with like hard cuts and not lose much speed when he does that. And he's more athletic than Tracy is, which is saying something, because Tyrone Tracy, you guys all saw last year what he's capable of. So I really like him. He doesn't have quite the gaudy avoided tackle rate numbers that Tracy did. That was one of the main statistics that got me super interested in him, was his avoided tackle rates at the collegiate level, but that also came on a relatively small sample size for Tracy. So that could be inflated. He really didn't do that at quite as high a level as a pro.
I want to ask you about two players who, it's funny, these are my two favorite values in the draft, and maybe we see things very similarly on prospects, Jacob, because we were both really high on Tyrone Tracy pre-draft, even before the Giants drafted him, and maybe these guys also kind of fit into that billing of forcing missed tackles and what we're looking for, what translates, which is yards after contact and forced missed tackles. RJ Harvey and Cam Scataboo. The Giants brought in Cam Scataboo for a top 30 visit. That's incredibly notable because the Giants have drafted 10 players in the last 3 draft classes from top 30 visits. They've brought in other backs I'm going to ask you about, but that's the one. But we haven't talked a lot about RJ Harvey, a little bit of an older back at 24, but I think he could be the best value in the class, if not Scataboo. So are you as high on those players, because you have them tiered, in this at least, as awesome playmaking potential, could end up being sneaky effective 1A in a backfield in the right situation, i.e. Bucky Irving with Liam Cohen?
Yeah, I think if they end up in the right spot, I think these two could, if the skills translate, they could be like top 20 playmakers at the running back position in the NFL right away. I really like Harvey. He reminds me of kind of a like Bucky Irving, Tyjae Spears hybrid. And if you have followed my work, you know that those are two of my favorite running backs. It's just the contact balance, it's the elusiveness, it's the ability to create yards on their own, the creativity as a runner to, turn nothing into something, but then also to be able to get in the open field and really create big plays with their ability to read the field and read the way that the blocks are developing and even like reverse the field. That shows up on Harvey's film a lot. So he is really, really intriguing. But the problem with both of these guys, Harvey and Scataboo, is pass protection. Harvey, the UCF at least tried to make him like a primary pass protector in 2023. So he did get a lot of reps. And I thought that his technique was better than Scataboo's, but I wonder if maybe he just doesn't have the size and the physicality for it or something, because his pressure rate allowed was pretty high. And they scaled back on that where they didn't use him that way as much. the next year in 2024. Scataboo is just a complete train wreck as a pass protector. He looks immature. He looks like he's just trying to like level people all of the time. And it's like, not only is that a risk to your health, but it's a risk to your quarterback's health. And I just don't think you're going to get on the field if you're doing that. I would be shocked if there was a coach who is willing to give him hardly any leeway at all with that. But as a playmaker, man, he's exciting. He can win in so many different ways. He can win with power. He is more athletic than people give him credit for. I think it's hilarious that he came into the combine and just like jumped out of the gym and then left. Because it does show with like and you see it on Phil Blount with the jump cuts, like he is an explosive athlete. And his burst is strong. It's maybe not as good as some of them. I mean, we've got Keyshawn Judkins in this class. We've got some absolute freaks, but it's up there. It's in the top half of the class for sure. And he definitely has the burst to when a window presents itself for him to shoot through and get 10 yards, get to the second level, he can get it. I also really think his ability to read the field and read his blocks and set up blocks is undersold in a big way. I think people get attached to all that he's doing, avoiding tackles and moving through contact and all of that. And then kind of cling to that as being like the only way that he wins. And they say, a lot of people say that that won't translate at the NFL level. Well, to that note, of all the running backs, I did a study where I looked at how running backs performed versus Power 4 and non-Power 4 schools. Damian Martinez and Cam Scataboo were the only running backs whose data actually got better against Power 4 competition. So as Cam Scataboo played higher levels of competition, his avoided tackle rate, his yards after contact, his yards per rush, success rate, all of it rose. And if I don't only have this data dating back to 2017, but if you look at running backs who have not performed well in this regard, who have like had boosted data against non-Power 4 schools, some guys who haven't been able to make a name for themselves at the pros yet, like Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, Braylon Allen, some of those guys. But if you look at the guys who are on the other end of the spectrum, where you find Damian Martinez and Cam Scataboo, it's like Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, where it's guys like maybe we were a little too low on, and then they came in and they've got the goods to keep doing it at the NFL level.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit. But in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. The great year of 2025 is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's TIMELINE.
Really interesting stats on that regard. And you mentioned Keyshawn Judkins, who is somebody who the Giants also brought in for a top 30 visit. So somebody I'd really want to get your opinion on, because I know he was someone who actually fell into that other side of that category of finding a lot of his production against non-Power 4s. But I want to know not just that, but not just the stats. I want to hear that too. But I want to know what your thoughts are on him as just a size speed guy with a lot of bursts. Can he be a potential 3-down guy, or what did you see when you watched his tape?
Yeah, so I was a little bit underwhelmed when I watched this tape in terms of contact balance, and that's something that people have pushed back on X. And I think that's fair. He does move really well and glide really well. He does have good balance in general, but I thought defenders had an easy time cutting him down. I think it's interesting though, because I almost never watch when I watch their film. It's not like highlights or something. It's like I watch the full game, and I almost never watch when they play these mid-major schools and stuff like that. Because it just
I'm the same way. I almost never watch those games. I feel the exact same way.
And then I look at the data, and he had like a 42% avoided tackle rate against non-Power 4 schools, and that dropped to like 22% against Power 4 schools. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I saw, was that 22%. People that I trust seem to really believe in Keyshawn Judkins. I just talked with Matt Wallman. He had him as his QB2. I think he's somebody who, you could run an offense through, and he can potentially play on all three downs. But there are just a lot of data points. Honestly, it would take a while to get into all of it. They're nuanced, but like there are a lot of data points where it's like, why isn't this better? Like if he's so good, like why was he not the most effective or efficient running back in his backfield in 2 out of his 3 seasons? He had the highest percentage of his runs that came against light boxes throughout a career of any of the 25 running backs that I evaluated the stats for this year, because at Ole Miss, that was just the lane Kiffin offense was like setting things up so easily for him.
Right.
And that to me is like, why wasn't he more effective? How did he only average 4 yards per rush in 2023? That seems so crazy to me that a guy who's going to go in round 1 or round 2 wasn't able to do more in like a perfect environment there. But then on the other side of the coin, like he's big, he's fast, he's extremely athletic and strong. Like the 10-yard split for him is slightly faster than Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Wow.
It's like in the same range as like all these guys that are like 190 pounds. And so to me, It's like you look at where the NFL is kind of like evolving from a meta standpoint. It makes sense that teams are going to want to just grab this guy and plug him in and be like, all right, you defenses that have spent the past 5 or 8 years adapting to try to stop Mahomes and all of this, and you've got all these agile defenders out there, good luck tackling this guy, We're just going to run this guy over and over. And so, yeah, if he gets in a situation where he's the clear lead back and it's good offensive line, I would expect him to just dominate, even though I do have a lot of questions about him.
Let's talk about his teammate then, Trayvon Henderson, because when I turned on his tape, it was just, first off, did not expect him to be as good in pass protection as he was. And as just somebody who loves football, I just absolutely adore that trait in a running back. But also the fact that he can flip your field just by one defensive mistake due to his vision and then that game-breaking speed, acceleration, and burst that he does possess. So can you just tell our audience what your thoughts are on Trayvon Henderson and possibly what you think this player's ceiling is?
Trayvon Henderson is a really weird and funny evaluation. So I was talking about Ollie Gordon earlier. The way that Ollie Gordon runs is how I imagined Trayvon Henderson might run before I got into watching the film. And the way that Trayvon Henderson runs is the way that I imagined Ollie Gordon might run. And what I mean when I say that is Trayvon Henderson is a small electric speed back, but he runs like he weighs 225 pounds. He tries to just run right through people's faces. And so his avoided tackle rates don't end up actually being that high, but his like yards after contact is really good. He has like been the most effective running back in his offense every year. He was more effective than Judkins last year. And when we saw him he was in primarily like a zone heavy scheme, but when they went to more man gap under Chip Kelly last year, he freaking dominated. And I think it makes so much sense. I think he's really good at just like getting in space, choosing. I think people get mad at his vision, and I get it because sometimes he is sprinting and just like running into the back of linemen, and that shows up, and that's really easy to like cling to that memory in your mind and kind of like overstate it. But like I do think that he's good at finding lanes and being able to win those situations where it's like you're reading the gap as it develops and you're making a guy miss, or you're running through the guy and just positioning yourself to best pick up the maximum amount of yards that are possible there. And so yeah, I think like if he goes to Chip Kelly with the Raiders, if he goes somewhere like that where he has the opportunity to be a 3-down back, I think he legitimately could. That's the way he was used early in his career. The people don't realize, I don't think, that he's been there doing this for 4 years. He was a true freshman, and he was effective. And there were like several games that year where he was handling 22, 27, 29 touches, and he was going for 130 scrimmage yards every single game when they were giving him that workload. So I think that is possible. And then, yeah, you brought up the pass protection is maybe the best in the class. I think I would give it to LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. But Trayvon is right there. So probably the most complete back in the class, because I think he's better in man gap, but he definitely could do zone rushing. He's definitely got the speed and the burst to just hit that hole, and that was what he did his first 3 seasons at Ohio State. So he can really win in a lot of ways for you.
So if he's the most complete, what about his game is more complete than Ashton Genty, who everybody is raving about and who is obviously very skilled and talented?
Well, you've seen him do it at a high level against high level competition for 4 years now. We do have those questions with Genty. We also do have his athletic testing, which we don't have with Genty. And then, we do know that he can be a high-level pass protector against, Big Ten competition, which is saying something. Genty, I think, is willing as a pass protector, but there's a difference between doing it and, projecting it. But, I mean, would I take Genty over him? Yeah, 10 days out of 10, all day, easy.
You want to give the audience maybe a just synopsis on Ashton Genty in general? Dan and I haven't really focused talking about him a ton because Dan and I are pretty convinced Joe Shane isn't going to select Ashton Genty third overall, knock on wood.
That would be fun. Ashton Genty is one of the most fun players that I've ever seen in my time being an NFL fan. So what made Bucky Irving so good last year? And Bucky Irving had an absolutely historical season for a rookie running back. For those who don't know, at 1,500 scrimmage yards with a snap rate below 50%. So absolutely absurd from an efficiency standpoint with the opportunities that he was given. What made Bucky so good was his contact balance, one, and then his creativity, two. His ability to, like I've talked about with a couple other guys, really make something out of nothing, always maximizing and creating yards after contact. Genty has that, but his contact balance is like Alvin Kamara level because he's much, much more compact than Bucky Irving. He's 5'8", 210 or whatever, whereas Bucky's like 5'10", 190 or something like that. So we've got a much more compact build. He also has much more long speed. And so Bucky came in and pretty much got whatever he wanted. Genty is similar in the way that he reads the field and flows with the field and takes what's there, but he can also, rather than creating just chunk plays of 15 and 20 yards, which Bucky does all the time, he can do that, and it's a freaking house call. He also has receiving upside. They didn't use him that way last year because they didn't need to, but the year before that, he did almost 600 receiving yards. He averaged over 3 yards per route run, which is elite for a wide receiver. Genty truly, short yardage, he's good. He can win in any way. He can make you miss. His avoided tackle rates are unlike anything we've ever seen. And what's so absurd is that his efficiency stats blow anything we've previously seen out of the water, and it comes on this massive workload. And that's what Matt Waldman pointed to as his best trait is his stamina, is his ability to just handle all of these touches and then keep going, just keep being able to rip off big runs. And he wears defenses down. He's everything you'd want in a running back.
I think some people don't know this, but he played wide receiver in high school, Genty, and that shows up. I think you're right. That's an untapped part of his game, the receiving upside. It's why I'm going to be insanely high on him in fantasy football leagues, even in year one. Obviously, when it comes to dynasty, do whatever you can to trade up to that number one pick and take him at one if you got it. But I think that's a key thing that you brought up. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to talk about two other players who have both been brought in for top 30 visits, are viewed by some in this class, Jacob, as the number 2 and number 3 running back in this class. You can decide if you want to get into the ranking side of it and where you view them, and if you're maybe lower or higher or just right on consensus when it comes to that ranking. But one of them will start with Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Did what you just said with Genty, which I thought is interesting. He averaged 8.4 yards per carry in the fourth quarter. He got better as the game went on. He wore down defenses with his style of play. What did you see from Caleb Johnson? Or can you understand why the Giants might be interested in him and they brought him in for a top 30 visit? What are your thoughts on him versus consensus?
Yeah, so at first when I watched Caleb Johnson, I was actually kind of down on him because my favorite trait in running backs is contact balance, and he goes down easy. He gets chopped really easily. And they're almost exclusively running him outside zone. And so he plays at this tempo where he's just looking for the space, the sliver to get through, and then he's going, and he's trying to get into the open field. And sometimes that leads to him over running plays, missing lanes, missing cutbacks, doing things that frustrate me. But I actually sat down and watched every touch that he had from 2024 again last night because I didn't want to by comparison to some of these other running backs who I love so much and do have the contact balance and all of that, I didn't want to be overly negative or biased towards him. Caleb Johnson is inevitable. He was inevitable at Iowa. He was the entire offense. He handled 40% of their offensive touches.
Wow.
He produced 41% of their scrimmage yards and 58% of their scrimmage touchdowns on offense.
Jeez.
That's higher than any running back since 2017, which is as far back as my database goes. And the only running backs who had a high percentage of the team's scrimmage yards in a season were Ashton Genty at 42% and Rashad Penny at 46% back in 2017. Caleb Johnson's was at 41%. So on par with Genty. And yeah, the fact that he was getting stronger deeper into games shows up. He really does wear defenses down. It just feels like you have to play those edges perfectly, or he's just going to break one. The Nebraska game was a perfect example of that, where Nebraska really dominated him the whole game, and then he just had a couple big plays at the end of the game where he just broke them. And that's truly how he feels. Is like, I think if there's an offense who feels like they can, offensive designer who feels like he can plan everything around Caleb Johnson, then like he will probably do the same thing at the NFL level. If he goes to like Pittsburgh, it's going to need to be outside zone, because I really think there are some runs that for this guy's sake, I don't know Caleb Johnson, but like I purposely didn't put on Twitter because they're so bad. Like watching him trying to navigate traffic up the middle, it's frustrating. But if you keep him where he's not doing any of the man gap stuff and he doesn't have to guess and he's just doing the zone, outside zone, I think he can dominate for somebody like Pittsburgh. Another good fit would be Chicago. Ben Johnson used a lot more outside zone with Detroit last year, and I could see him liking Caleb Johnson as a fit there. I'm curious what you guys, I thought he might be a fit with the Giants. I know that your coaches can be they're flexible with what they do with their personnel.
Yes, they're flexible when it comes to their personnel and their rushing scheme. I'm not as high on Caleb Johnson to come to the New York Giants and be that back, especially with the cost. Maybe he'd be there at 65. I think there's, in this very deep running back class, there's other guys that I'm probably about to ask you about that entice me a little bit more at value rather than Caleb Johnson. I don't know about you, Dan.
I feel the same way. I don't. Yeah, we're flexible with the scheme, but I don't think we run enough outside zone concepts for it to make sense to me. And I think you really got to design a scheme around him if you draft him. Like, he becomes the focal point of your run game. I'd rather take a back that you can mold into the current running game and run scheme that you have, which I think you can do with a lot of these other players. So I'm on the same wavelength as you there, Nick.
And Jacob, I wanted to ask you, because you brought up contact balance, and I know there's two players that you've tweeted about and spoken about. And I would like your overall assessment on their skill sets, just because they both possess contact balance, and that is Taj Brooks from Texas Tech and Corey Kleiner from Cincinnati. So what are your overall impressions of their games, and how good are their contact balance?
These are my boys. Yeah. I just for fun, put together like a subjective list of like, here's who I think are the best, when it comes to contact balance. Tier 1 is Ashton Genty, like he's by himself. Tier 2 is Scataboo, and then Kleiner and Brooks. And like that's the end of the tier. And the next is like RJ Harvey, Dylan Sampson, Omari and Hampton. And like I really like these guys, like Sampson and Harvey and Hampton. I put Kleiner and Brooks ahead of them. If you watch them, they're just boulders out there. They're just really hard to get knocked off their track. And even if you do, they just kind of roll. Taj Brooks is like, I've got so many. I've looked at 30 running backs at this point, so I don't have the exact measurements. I'm pretty sure he played at like 5'9", 230 or something like that. Dan was like getting really excited after reading the newsletter that I wrote today about Cam Scataboo and wanting the Giants to pick him. And I'm like, just take Taj Brooks in the 6th. Just let Brooks be the pass protector and let Tyrone Tracy be your early down playmaker, and then Brooks can mix in. I think that'd be a great cheap backfield. Brooks, like I mentioned that list of players who had 2 or more seasons where they pass protected a lot and did it at a high level. He was on that list. I think he can play on all 3 downs. He's an older running back. Corey Kleiner is a little bit older too. I think they're both 22 or 23 years old. But they're both like phenomenal vision, phenomenal contact balance. I think that they can be good rushers. And I think Kleiner has even an extra gear that Brooks might not have athletically that could allow him to be like this year's Bucky Irving that comes out of nowhere and averages 5 yards a carry. He's awesome. And I think people just, go into the eval process, and there's so many running backs, they might not even get to this Corey Kleiner guy. And if they do, it's like, he's just some guy from Cincinnati. He's small. He's not super athletic, He was recruited by LSU, and he transferred back to Cincinnati because that's where he's from. But like, this is a legitimate prospect. He had a career avoided tackle rate above 30%, which is elite. That's like top 6 or 7 in the class. He's really a really strong option on running downs. Like, he's probably one of the 6 or 7 best, just like pure early down runners in the class.
Phenomenal stuff. That's Corey Kleiner. We've been dropping a lot of names. We'll try to remember to give you schools as well. Brooks, to me, I haven't watched almost any of Kleiner, but I have watched Brooks. Brooks, to me, is one of the most intriguing prospects in the class. I think something I picked up years ago in 2018 when I read the Matt Wallman's RSP is how to evaluate running backs in a different fashion. I used to be very much so a size speed guy, look at how they look athleticism wise. And he kind of had Nick Chubb over Saquon Barkley in that class, which now looks, I guess, bad because Barkley broke out with the Eagles. Before last year, it looked like a great call and Chubb just got injured. But he talked about the way they set up the blocks, the way they process the blocks, their patience, their ability to move in and out of tight spaces while working within the flow of the run game and the run scheme. I think Brooks does that better than almost anyone I've watched in that class. He may not have the size, he may not have athleticism, and this may mean he's nothing in the NFL, to be honest, because I think the reason it worked for Nick Chubb and works for players like Nick Chubb is because they also have athleticism and burst and things that give you that against NFL level competition. I'm a little concerned about how Brooks translates to the NFL, but he is the runner that, like, if you're looking for somebody that I think, like you mentioned earlier, Ben Johnson could like Caleb Johnson. I think he could like Brooks, just remembering like some of the things he saw in Montgomery that made him, that led him to playing Montgomery over DeAndre Swift. And everyone's like, how could you ever make that decision based on, how athletic Swift looks and where you guys drafted him? So just a player that's on my list as well. I want to ask you about another player I'm intrigued by, Jacob. And I talked about him with Nick briefly. He's not one of the top 30 visits with the Giants. And I'll say this, when I watch tape of running backs from this team, I'm always a little skeptical because their Mickey Mouse ass offense just leads to these insanely light boxes and a lot of space for running backs to work with. So I came in skeptical with the back that was drafted out of the school last year. And I was impressed with what I saw with him in a short sample size at the NFL level. I think this is the best version of back that came out of Tennessee. And that's Dylan Sampson. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on him. I love his game, and I think he could end up being a super big steal in this class.
Yeah, I love Samson as well. How I would describe what you were talking about with Brooks is like processing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of similar to like a quarterback making progressions or something like that, where it's like a running back's ability to just process all of the other 21 pieces that are moving on the field with them. I think Brooks is the best in the class at that. And then the two that are after him, I would say, are Samson and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt from Arizona. If you want to spend time on him, we can. Samson, what's so amazing about him even being in that category is that he's 20 years old. He played half this season at 19 years old. This is his first season as a starter at Tennessee. He had been like a receiving playmaker for them before that. And he really didn't have hardly any receiving this year. But on the ground, he just dominated, and it was just like going to him over and over and over again. He handled, 20 plus touches in a bunch of different games, which is good, for somebody with his size. I think he can handle it. He did have a high percentage of light boxes face. That's real. And that those runs did affect his overall efficiency. So I don't want to get carried away with Samson. I think that there's some room to improve for him before he becomes like a truly elite runner. But I think that the framework might be there. He didn't run at the combine, right? I wish that he would have, because I feel like he has really impressive speed that shows up on film, but he does occasionally get caught. But still, like, to me, like the difference between him and Trevor Etienne, I watched those two back to back, and it's like they're both playing against SEC, and they're both good at making people miss. But like Etienne can't ever seem to get away and make big plays, whereas Samson was like creating chunk plays over and over and over. And I think that was just a good reminder, like, it's not easy to create, breakaway plays against SEC.
True.
We saw that with Etienne, who's like a real high level athlete. He can make the guys miss, but it was not often resulting in anything big. Samson did have a ton of explosive plays show up on his film. And then the other thing that I'll bring up with him is that I love the way that he navigated traffic. I think his low center of gravity, and then just like his feet, man. Like Dylan Sampson, I know a lot of people have foot fetishes. That's never been a thing for me, but Dylan Sampson maybe is changing my mind this year, man. Like, I seriously like can't stop watching his feet and tweeting about his feet, because like it's the backbone of like every play, and why the play is so good is like, watch his feet, watch how active he is with his feet, and how he's able to like feel out the space and manipulate and like get to the precise location that he needs to be on the field to make it work. he kind of reminds me of Ray Rice in that regard, like the way that he navigates the field. I think Rice is a little bit more explosive and powerful than him. So I don't, want to just throw that out there as a 1-for-1 comp, but he's really, really intriguing as a vision and a contact balance guy for somebody so young, because I think he could add to his frame and he could get even better at his feel for the game.
Wow.
He's one player I still got to watch too, Samson. I'm going to get to that Tennessee offense. I mean, to be honest, man, with that Josh Heupel offense, I've seen a lot of that over the last couple of years with Jalen Hyatt and watching a lot of Hendon Hooker tape. But there are two running backs that Dan and I have talked. I would say we talked more about one, but I wanted to get your overall assessment on this guy. And then we've talked briefly on this other one. So first, Bashal Tutin from Virginia Tech, and then Woody Marks from USC. What are your overall thoughts on these two players, and what role do you think they could have or thrive within if they get drafted and go to the NFL?
Marks is interesting. He's sort of like Samson in the way that he moves. He's not as explosive. He has some absolutely bananas receiving numbers at USC. He's also a capable pass protector, so I could see kind of like LaQuint Allen, if a team really thinks that he can help them on passing downs, he's like a sneaky 4th or 5th round pick or something like that. But honestly, I don't know if he's athletic enough to matter beyond that. And that's kind of how I felt with LaQuint Allen too, whereas like, I like this guy, I like this player, and I could see a team liking him. But I just don't know how much upside there is beyond just pass blocking and check and release, and maybe, doing some stuff out of the backfield down the field too. Tutin is the guy who's like more exciting. Just absolutely insane athlete, especially just off the blocks, just like unbelievable, just shot out of a cannon, crazy speed. He and Caleb Johnson and DJ Giddens to some extent are guys that I think really do need to be in wide zone schemes, at least to start. The difference between him and Caleb Johnson is that Tutin did show some pretty surprisingly high avoided tackle rates.
Yep.
That did translate even against Power 4 competition. And it's in the ACC. It's not, Big Ten or SEC. When it, there is some distinction that I guess does matter when you're talking about Power 4. But still, his numbers weren't like boosted by playing against a bunch of bad teams. He like his efficiency numbers before he transferred to VT did carry over, and so that's pretty interesting to me. Like he's got the athleticism to be the classic San Francisco guy and just like burst into big plays here and there, but I think he could be more. The way that I watched him when he navigated stuff up the middle, it felt like if he just slowed down a little bit, he might actually like have some processing ability, but those reps were kind of few and far between. He was overrunning things a lot.
I did a profile of Tutin for CBS Sports for our draft stuff. I really liked watching him. I mean, I thought that he ran really low center of gravity at 5'9", 206, more powerful player. I think he was one of the rare players who was top 5 in avoided tackle rate and yards after contact, which was surprising to me. But really what it comes down to for me, that 4.32 speed is real. Like he's one of the few actual real live home run hitters in this class. And really that enters the NFL. You won't find players with his kind of speed, but also, who he reminded me of, Jacob, watching him? A faster version. And this is a player I loved in his draft class. A faster version of Khalil Herbert is kind of what I was reminded of when I watched Bashal Tutin. Just more home run speed version of that. But 9 fumbles lost, 11 in the last 2 years. Like that, you keep that up and you're just never getting on the field.
Yeah, fumbles are a problem for Dylan Sampson too. I wanted to bring that up in reference to the Giants because I know Tracy frustrated them last year. But yeah, there are a few backs who have some ball security concerns. He's one of them.
Yeah, it's a good point because Dable did pull Tracy after some of those fumbles.
I think the Giants too, just because I want to focus on that. Look, they could add any body type, but Dan and I have speculated maybe they're looking for somebody a little bit more bruising, 220 pounds. Who are some of those day 3 backs, in your opinion, who fit that category? A little bit bigger, a little bit more bruising of a back, a different style than a Tyrone Tracy Jr. and a Devin Singletary.
I don't think that he's going to be a day 3 back, but Damian Martinez is the guy. He's the best power back in this class. A guy who I think is going to be a day 3 back and I think deserves much better is Raheem Sanders. Guess who has the fastest timed speed on his 40-yard dash in this class? It's Raheem freaking Sanders.
Wow,
it's not Tutin. It's Raheem Rocket Sanders. He weighs 220 pounds. but the guy can fly. It takes him a second to get up to his top speed, but he can absolutely fly. And he was really effective in short yardage situations. This was a guy who broke out in his sophomore season at Arkansas. He had a pretty dominant season against the SEC. It wasn't quite like Ollie Gordon's 2023, but it was really good, and it was against a higher level competition. He got hurt in 2023, missed most of that season, transferred to South Carolina, and his efficiency dropped. His overall numbers dropped as well. And so I think people have just kind of written him off. But he was playing against SEC, and if you do just look even a little bit deeper under the hood, it's pretty easy to contextualize why things dropped for Raheem Sanders. South Carolina can't run the ball, was not able to run the ball at all before he got there. And then he got there, and all of a sudden they can run the ball. And if you compare his numbers to the rest of the backfield, even last year, way, way better, way more effective than the rest of the backfield at South Carolina. And he wasn't the only show in town. They were getting other guys out there. I don't think that that's a coincidence that all of a sudden their run game transformed from 2023 to 2024. They were literally one of the least efficient running games in college football the year before. And the Raheem Sanders comes, and it's actually good. His numbers weren't as good when you compare them to his Arkansas numbers, but that's because his yards before contact dropped from 3 to 1.1 yards before contact. So it was 40% of what his previous yards before contact was. His yards after contact went up. So he was doing all that he could, but the offense wasn't presenting anything for him. If you watch his film, which I have obsessively because I really can't understand the disconnect here. I think it's just there's too many running backs in this class. I think he looks better than he did in 2022. People have told me that he's lost a step. It's I guess it's kind of like the Caleb Johnson thing where it's I think you're just seeing a big guy and seeing that his time isn't that fast and saying that he's not fast, but there's tons of breakaway plays if you actually watch the film. They call him Rocket Sanders for a reason. He's constantly creating big plays. And then, his success rate on short yardage runs was 87%. Damian Martinez was the only guy that was higher at 90%. Ashton Genty was 82%. Those are the top three. Raheem Sanders, nobody talks about him. He was a good receiver too. He pass blocked a decent amount. He wasn't very good at pass blocking, but he was a good receiver at Arkansas and at South Carolina. He had the most total avoided tackles on receptions through a career of any running back, tied Ashton Genty with 41 avoided tackles as a receiver. So it's all there statistically. The film, everything backs it up, and apparently this guy's going to be a 6th round pick. I don't know why.
The film backs it up. Yeah, go ahead.
He looked bigger than 6 foot 217 too. Watching it.
Yeah,
he looks. I wonder what his playing weight was.
He's a size speed freak in a lot of ways and a bet on traits guy, but with the stats to back it up. It's kind of insane that he's falling, or, I see him viewed as it just speaks to how deep this running back class is, right? He could fall into outside the top 20, outside the top 25 of some running back rankings. You'll likely get this guy somewhere on day 3. Why would you take a running back at 34 or 65 when you're going to get these types of players? You're never going to get this deep into any draft class this deep. I mean, you could literally make the case for him as a size speed freak that you're going to get, and he's ranked outside the top 25 at running back. And there's a few guys in that. I mean, we haven't even discussed something like Brashard Smith out of SMU, that Tyrone Tracy path, former receiver turned running back. Kyle Monungai, a favorite of Nick and I. I know he doesn't have as much of the traits, but man, does he have good tape at times. And he took over the backfield. Jaden Blue, if you want a home run hitter, there's a lot of players we haven't even touched on at all. Donovan Edwards, who I don't love, but was a big time recruit. Some people like him as well. Guys aren't even making it inside the top 20 of rankings at this position. It's insanely stacked. And that just goes to show the Giants, 1, must come out of this class with a running back. 2, though, is it worth going 34? You may love a Marion Hampton or Caleb Johnson. Is it worth giving up that draft capital when you're not going to get a D lineman or an O lineman with any kind of value in the 6th round? Those are mostly wasted picks. D-line occasionally.
Jacob,
never.
Yes, Jacob brought up a name earlier, and I want him to expound upon it, and that is Ja'Cory Croskett.
That's Merritt. Your boy, Nick. That's one of your.
I do like him as well. Arizona great, Ja'Cory Croskett, a Merritt, right? Because he played one game there and then was rendered ineligible, which is very unfortunate. So, Jacob, there are 2 of you on the screen right now. We will remove one of you. Something very funky happened. We are talking about Ja'Cory Croskett Merritt, Jacob, and we wanted you to expound on his skill set.
It's a Nick favorite.
Yes. Can you please talk about the one game Arizona playing, formerly of New Mexico, formerly of Alabama State, Ja'Cory Croskett Merritt?
Yeah, so he tested really, really well, and I think it shows up on his film. True, like size, speed freak, and he's really, really good at start stop. I wish I could give credit to this person, but somebody reached out to me on Twitter with data about like running back's ability to accelerate and decelerate, and he was like top of the list in both. And I think when you watch his film, it shows up because, and it shows up in the stats too. He has really high avoided tackle rates. Also, there's a skill set there, I think, that could translate. It's tough because it was at New Mexico primarily, and I don't remember the school before that, but an even smaller school. So how will it translate? I don't know. But he played all three downs. He was a pass protector and did it at a high level. And he has some receiving upside too, I think. So we'll see. He's an older back. I don't know how much draft capital is going to be put into a running back that I think will be 24 by the time the season starts. But
24 right now. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, everything's there athletically. He dominated the Shrine Bowl, I think it was.
Yes.
Shrine Bowl MVP. Like he looks really good. I loved his film. And then he only got one game at Arizona before eligibility concerns came up, but he got to face his former team and he absolutely dominated them. He avoided a tackle on like 60% of his rushes, and then it was like, okay, that's it. See you in the NFL.
Unbelievable. 5'10", 206, 445. Excellent tape. It's just crazy, man. Like, you look at this class and they're so deep. I can't wait to see who Kyle Shanahan drafts out of this class. You know he's going to draft at least one running back, and you know he's going to end up being unbelievable successful for fantasy football purposes. So that's somebody all of you should be targeting in Dynasty in a class this deep. But, you can work through this class. There's a player who I just recently started watching, Jacob, who I now really like, and he has gotten almost no hype. And I want to hear your thoughts on him. Jarquez Hunter out of Auburn. What have you seen from Hunter, and what are your thoughts on where you'd be okay taking him maybe?
Yeah, I think he's the Khalil Herbert comparison, honestly. Yeah, I like Jarquez Hunter. I feel bad. People always come for me on Twitter, with their pitchforks telling me that I've got Jarquez Hunter too low. And it's like, no, I know. But like, there's so many guys. Have you watched Corey Kleiner? I bet you haven't. Like, no, Jarquez Hunter is great. Avoided tackle rates are great. He's just kind of another one of these guys that's really hard to bring down. Great, low center of gravity. I will say that there are some things that stand out, like at Auburn, that I think it was a little bit easier for him to find running lanes, like yards before contact and stuff like that. The percentage of light boxes that he faced, stuff like that, was a little bit easier than some of these other backs. Like Corey Kleiner was literally like Cincinnati's offense was like just him, like it was a mess. But with that said, like Hunter was doing it against a higher level competition, so right. I don't want to take anything away from him. He's good. He's intriguing, and he can play on passing downs as well. So he absolutely could be one of these guys that, surprises people. I've seen Sigmund Bloom, and I've seen this sentiment from a few different people where it's like, it's great and fun doing all this analysis on this class, but ultimately it's probably just going to come down to randomness and chance with who gets hurt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Hunter is absolutely one of those guys where he could, if he falls into an opportunity, hell yeah, I think he could have a good career. Yeah.
That's the interesting part. I think that's such a good point by Sig, but it's like, we don't know where that's going to happen, and it's going to happen in some spots. And at least though with this class, we know, like versus other classes, if those opportunities arise, these guys are insanely talented players who could literally be unbelievable for you for fantasy and NFL production as well, versus other classes where it's like, yeah, these guys fell into opportunity, but they didn't really do much with it because they're not that good.
Hunter in most classes is probably like a top 5 or 6 running back. It's like he's got the build, he has athleticism, he has advanced data, he did it at a high level against SEC competition. Yes. Like, what's not to like? But in this class, he's just buried.
I know. It's crazy, dude. Like, there's a lot of players like that. Even Damian Martinez, who you like his tape, Nick likes his tape, I like his tape. He's buried in this class too. He's not even viewed as like anything more than a 5th or 6th round pick, really.
NFL will probably view that a little bit differently, though.
I think it'll go earlier.
Yeah, maybe, but yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of backs in this class, and only so many teams to take them.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. If we think there's 24, 25 backs, like we basically discussed on this pod, we've come damn close to discussing that many. There's only 32 teams, and some of them have set running back situations. So that's when people start to fall that you don't expect to. It's a numbers game. It's a supply demand type situation. Like there will be 4 or 5 of these guys we've talked about. They're just hanging around for Rounders reference for those who might know it, those who might not know it on this podcast. Sadly, Nick does not know it. I've told him to watch that movie 1,000 times. One of the best movies
with me, man.
I remember the time I offered, we were there, we were hanging out. We did a little hashish, and I suggested Rounders, and we picked a different movie.
Well, yeah, that's not a hashish movie though.
It can be a hashish
really
movie.
I feel like that's I gotta pay attention and I gotta know what's going on type of movie. Like a Harold and Kumar, that's a hashish movie.
You don't have to know too much of what's going on in Rounders. It just kind of flows, and it's so goddamn good. But anyway, these prospects that are just hanging around, and we're going to be looking at round 6, Jacob, and round 5. Like, how the heck is this guy still there? I guarantee you that happens. I will make that bet with you right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan James shared a backfield with
Jordan James yet.
Shared a backfield with Bucky Irving, was more efficient than him by far, was the most efficient running back in the country by EPA.
Similar style runner, too.
Yeah, he doesn't have, he doesn't have nearly the like creativity and vision that Bucky does. He's more of just like, I'm just going to find the hole and plug it.
Okay.
But like, yeah, he did that really, really well. 23 to 24, the most efficient rusher by EPA across his 2 seasons.
Wow.
Nobody cares.
Nobody knows. Yeah, you're right.
He's like 20 years old. He's super young, 21 years old. Like nobody cares.
The only person I've seen care about him is Dane Brugler. He has him as the 7th overall running back, and that's it though. Nobody else talks about him. It's crazy, dude. You're right. Like this class, we talked a little bit about Giddens, another player who's like an athleticism bet that could end up working out. I mean, we're just working through this class, and there's so much talent at running back. I don't know, man. I just think the Giants have to take somebody here at some point. I'm hoping it's day 3. I'm with you, Jacob. Jacob and me don't want our Tyrone Tracy shares in Dynasty absolutely kaput by the Giants taking like Marion Hampton or a Caleb Johnson. We didn't actually get your thoughts. Let's ask one. Nick, you can get Nick, you go, and then I'll finish with one more.
Yeah, there's one running back who received a lot of hype earlier in his college career that I wanted to ask you about because I've heard like absolutely nothing about this guy throughout the pre-draft process, and that is Michigan's Donovan Edwards.
Yeah. He's been my least favorite film, and I've watched like 30 running backs. He's just seems like he's running blind out there. It's like when my brother's adopted from Taiwan. It's like when he first got to America and he got to play video games with me, and he's literally just like turbo, like straight into the line, like just trying to like get a big play. And it's like, what? Like, no, that's not how you play. Like I don't know. I feel bad saying this about this guy who's like probably gonna be NFL. Like he's clearly better at his job than me, but it's like,
yeah,
I truly like don't see the vision when I watch it. Like I'm confused, and I don't think it's. I mean, his numbers got worse as his career went on. He was somebody people got excited about early on, and he's super electric athletically. Like his 10-yard split is I think the fastest in this whole class.
Wow.
So like, when you earlier were like, Shanahan's going to grab somebody, I was like, I bet it'll be him. I bet it'll just be like that, like in round 6 or whatever. He thinks he could just take him and make him a thing like Garindo or whatever. If he gets in his own scheme, I could see that maybe working out. And maybe it just proves me wrong. He's got the athleticism to do it.
Production certainly wasn't there. 991 yards was the most he ever had, only 589 last year. But he was I believe he was the 4th highest recruit at running back in the 2021 class. The number 4 ranked running back in the 20. Big time, like size, not size, but athleticism type guy. So you're making a bet on traits and pedigree. I'm with you. He was the least interesting of the ones I've seen. But one guy that I want to finish on that we didn't get to, I mentioned him before, but I didn't get your thoughts on him. And then we'll wrap up there, only because the Giants had him in for a pre-draft visit. So Marion Hampton, the running back out of UNC. What's your breakdown for Hampton? Any stats you have, and just your general thoughts? Is he a player that because he's very highly viewed in the draft community. Some people think he's a lock 1st-round pick, which is rare for running backs in the NFL. Any thoughts on Hampton?
Yeah, he's another running back whose numbers were much, much better when not facing Power 4 schools. And that one in particular is a concern to me. Judkins popped up, Henderson popped up, but it's like their Power 4 schools are really, really good. That's not maybe the case so much with the ACC, especially this past year. Like I don't that bothered me a little bit because I know there are people who don't believe in Hampton too.
Right.
And part of my excitement for him is that his analytics are really good. His avoided tackle rate's really good. His yards after contact is really good, stuff like that. But all of that stuff shrunk when facing Power 4 schools. But and as far as like a film evaluation, I did love watching him run. He's really, really patient. He is sort of like Samson, except he's bigger. He's really good at reading out blocks and taking what's there. Sometimes he's even hesitant. I would say though, which is it shows up in his yards before contact, which is one of the lowest rates in the class. And so he's a weird one because like if you just group him in with other running backs who have averaged over 4 yards after contact per rush, it's really, really good pros. It's guys who went on to have really explosive careers. And so, like, does he belong in that group, or is that more of just a reflection of like kind of the guy he is stylistically? Some of that Le'Veon Bell stuff at the line. But yeah, he's got size, he got speed, he can pass block. He had 2 years. He was on that list of guys who did a bunch of pass protecting and did it at a high level. But then, like Matt Waldman had some concerns with his pass protecting, and I've heard that from other people as well, and they know more about evaluating running back pass protecting than I do. So, for me, what I do is mostly geared towards fantasy football, and I think Hampton is like a easy pick there, just an easy pick. If he goes in round 1, like he's probably going to play all 3 downs, but I don't know that he's going to be like your typical first round running back in terms of actual NFL contribution. I'm curious to see how the skill set will translate, because a lot of the ways that he was able to get out of tackles was just kind of like wiggling through contact. He's kind of weird in that way. And I don't necessarily know that that's going to work so well against better tacklers.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Giants clearly have high thoughts on him. He reminds me a lot in some of the things you said, like that yards before contact, how high he runs. Sometimes you would see this happen with this player where he gets stopped behind the line of scrimmage before the play gets started, and then those long strides and the power and deep speed. Jonathan Taylor, that's the comp I have for him, a stronger version of Jonathan Taylor. But I really like his game, and I think he's one of those guys that's film-wise, anyone who watches the tape, like if you're a tape guy, you're going to love watching him. So if the Giants drafted him, I could understand why they went in on that. Jacob, any other thoughts on this RB class? Any 30,000 for fewer? Just anything you miss before we get out of here?
I do like Kyle Monanga that you brought up. I think he's really good. I hope that his freaking knees can handle the hell that he puts him through, because that guy's crazy with the cuts. It's just violent. I will say on the Hampton Taylor comparison that JT is somebody who hasn't had his avoided tackle rates haven't necessarily translated to the pros, but he's still been able to be good in spite of that. And that is because he can handle the workload and not wear down, And I think that it's possible that Hampton is that kind of an athlete that can do a similar type of thing.
Yeah, and also the home run stuff with Taylor. Yep. That's a big part of his fantasy success. He hits the home run plays. I think Hampton can as well.
All right, Jacob, right before we do get you out of here, the one last question. And it's just, if you had to, we're going to exclude Damian Martinez from this exercise, but if you had to kind of put your seal of approval on one player who was a day 3 player, would that be Corey Kleiner?
If it's specifically for the Giants, it would be Taj Brooks pretty easily. Okay. Brooks is who I had ranked the highest out of these guys for fantasy. If you're looking, that's because I think he has a chance to get on the field. I think Brooks has like multiple paths to potentially carving out an NFL career for himself. Kleiner, if you're looking for just that early down rushing, if we think that Tracy can, play better as a, receiving back than he did during his rookie season, or for any team that like already has a competent pass protector and stuff and a receiving threat, which really Kleiner was fine as a pass protector, I thought. But anyway, if you're looking for a guy to contribute on early downs, I think Kleiner is your best bet. But it wouldn't surprise me if even 2 years from now, we look back on this and then like, what were we? Corey Kleiner was nothing. You never got a chance, like that happens a lot for running backs. And so I would rather bet on somebody like Brooks because I think there's multiple paths to him being able to contribute. I think the same is probably true for Raheem Sanders because I think you could use him in the screen game. I think that he definitely could be a power back for an offense. I don't know. Kleiner, I could see a lot of different running backs that are already in the NFL, like outclassing him or like fitting better with what an offense wants to do. But if he gets a chance, I really think he's the best bet of these like Monangai kind of guys, Marcus Yarns, where it's like this guy, just played at like a small school or whatever. And like, we don't really know what the skill set is. I think he's the best of those guys. I think he really can be a plus rusher at the NFL level.
I like it. I think he's the least amount of yards he rushed for in a game was 109 last year. Like he hit over 100 yards in every single game that he played for Texas Tech.
Impressive numbers. These guys, a lot of them are workhorses. I'm really intrigued by a lot of these players, Jacob. The one that you really put me on to, I'm going to watch more tape of, is Raheem Sanders. I watched some of that, what you put out there on Twitter days ago. I think it was a few days ago. Maybe it's because they wore the same jersey, but that post-contact acceleration that he has, that burst and acceleration after contact, a little bit of Darren McFadden reminder to me. I just think, how the hell are we getting a guy like that? Is the NFL getting a guy like that on day 3 in round 5? Probably ends up being round 6. So
and he's way better than McFadden in terms of vision and processing.
Yeah, it's insane, really. Like that back in the day, those types of players would go in round 1 or round 2. Now their class is so deep, like he'll go in round 5 or 6. So Raheem Sanders, someone to keep an eye on. A lot of backs to keep an eye on. Thank you so much. We went through 25 backs on this podcast. What an incredible show. You can find Jacob Gibbs's work at JAGibbs_23 on Twitter. That's JAGibbs_23. You can find him on CBS Sports, on Sportsline, and over, if you want to get his newsletter with all of his content, you can sign up for that over on cbssports.com. Search newsletters. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone else, have a great rest of your week. Great content. You just heard it. Please hit the like button. Please put a comment in there. We need you to juice this algorithm. Jacob knows all about my pleas for juicing algorithms from the Beyond the Box Score podcast. I will pound and hustle and do whatever the hell I can to get a like right now. And
juicing and pounding, Dan Schneider.
Juicing and pounding and hustling. This is my life. Please help us get to 10,000 subscribers. We're so freaking close. Everyone else, enjoy the draft. A few more days after this one drops before we find out all the information. We get to break down these prospects. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.